Welcome to another fun-filled Friday fun edition, the last one for the month of April. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid the Kid, which is me. That's Lakeena McGee, which is she. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow Lakeena McGee on the Twitter and Lakeena's going again the IG.
Make sure you download the Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, too, you can catch up on other live shows we have airing throughout the week. So you happen to miss them, you can go back and watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Make sure you download the Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, please follow us on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, please find Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And please subscribe to our podcast. We know you've been doing it. Please keep doing it. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. We have War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS Podcast. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, that's at War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. And happy anniversary to War Media. It's been 10 years, or the 10-year mark. They celebrated 10 years yesterday. To shout out to our buddy Kyle Means and and our buddy Josh is from the Bigs, and also to all the other great folks that have worked at War Media. They got bigger things are coming up, so stay tuned.
Mm-hmm. We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Typing in questions or comments in the comments section, Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something stupid, I've given Lakeena full power to give you fools to build and be a boot. Lakeena, did the good folks behave on Monday even though I wasn't here?
Yes, everybody was on their best behavior.
Good. Great to hear. We got the best audience in the world. Also, too, don't forget, you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago now live and direct on Roku TV. That's right. So celebrate the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on that sports folder and download that Sports Zone Chicago app. If you don't have a Roku TV, you have some handheld devices laying around, iPhone, iPad, iTouch, your personal PC like Lakeena's using right now, or your Chromebook like I'm using right now, just go to the Google Play Store, download the Roku TV app, and access Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. So no more excuses. Celebrate with the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, live and on demand.
Anytime and anywhere you need.
And we can provide. Now I get the ex-boyfriend treatment. Perfect.
Sorry.
All right, Lakeena, let's get us started on this Friday edition of Second City Sports, the last one for the month of April. The NFL first-round draft took place last night, Thursday, from Kansas City, Missouri. The Chicago Bears moved down one slot from number 9 to number 10 in the trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. They selected offensive tackle from the University of Tennessee, Mr. Darnell Wright from the University of Tennessee. Lakeena, we talked about this last week around this time with our new good friend, Eric Duarte from Windy City Gridiron. I remember us bringing up his name during the draft. Me personally, if it wasn't for any outside issues, which I wasn't here, unfortunately, on Monday, I would have said the Bears would have selected Paris Johnson. We'll tell you where he was selected in just a moment. But that was going to be my prediction, that the Bears needed an offensive lineman. They have 9 picks left in this draft, and it was going to be key for them to select an impact player. But we all know this is a heavy defensive draft, but this team needs offensive linemen, especially to help Justin Fields progress as they're trying to find out if he's still their franchise quarterback. I like this pick, Lakeena. Me personally, I would have selected Paris Johnson. Of course, he was long gone when the Bears turn came up at number 10. But I don't have a problem with this pick, Lakeena. I saw some of the film. Sure, like you've seen some of the film. He did not give up any sacks last year. He's a very good run blocker. He's a very good pass blocker. I think he's better as a run blocker than he is at the pass. But I think the Bears, at least on depth chart wise, they got better with that selection last night.
Yeah, I think Wright also has the most experience. He had like 1,000, over 1,000 snaps over at
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee. Well, and Will Anderson, of course, we'll get to where he went in a second. Of course, All-American uh, edge rusher from Alabama. He said, look, he didn't give up a sack when, of course, Tennessee upset Alabama last year. So
Mm-hmm.
that was, you could say, look, he has, great, foot speed. He can sort of, jolts linebackers out of the positioning with with a push. We'll see what he does against sort of like these, bigger, faster, stronger, NFL guys. And we saw that, like, the SEC is the best conference or one of the best conferences in all college football. And he was able to do a really great job of keeping Hendon Hooker upright for the most part. But,
Mm-hmm.
some would say that maybe, he's got, maybe needs better like pocket protection, to hold up in the pass, or more of like a catcher, not really a puncher, as they say, like not really like a puncher like this, but like a puncher like forearm up front. So that's probably the only sort of thing. But look, I mean, they were gonna go O lineman. You had a whole list of O line guys. Paris Johnson, of course, ended up going early. There was some more buzz about him going to top 5. Yeah, that's what ended up happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, look, this was a nice pick for the Bears. Yeah, you could probably say Jalen Carter. I know some would, some have said that maybe there were, the various, issues. Maybe, I can understand why some people were a little bit concerned that maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe they kind of, let that kind of get the best of him. But it is what it is. Again, but the Eagles really want him. We'll tell you the rest of the first round in a second. But I feel like the Bears made the nice pick. I mean, look, they had like a full list of edge, O linemen. Of course, there was Peter Skoronski, the All-American from Northwestern. He ended up going to afterwards, in Tennessee, which is weird because the guy from outside, he's from outside Chicago, suburban Chicago. He ended up going to Tennessee. Darnell is actually from Tennessee. He actually ended up going to the Chicago. So I guess that's kind of ended up happening from there. But I think this is fine. I mean, look, I know some people were saying that maybe they could have went ahead and got Carter. We'll see. I mean, we won't know about this stuff for like the next few years. So I always say, like, people need to kind of slow down and sort of say, okay, this is a nice pick for the Bears, and it was.
And what's been the message I've been preaching over the last year or so, Lakeena, especially this offseason? The Bears infrastructure is currently being built right now. You need to have those impact players impact your team and insert the message and the tone of the culture. We all know how you still win games in this league, in the NFL. And it's still the same, even though this is a pass happy league today. You still need to win up the trenches, your defensive lines and your offensive lines. Now, I think the Bears will still pick on offensive linemen with those 9 picks they have remaining starting tonight and tomorrow. But they got to work on this defense, and we'll bring up the names with our guy, Herb Howard of It's the Big C's, that Chicago Bears reporter in front of the show. He's going to come. He'll be coming up within the next half hour or so, and we'll discuss it much deeper with him. But I like this pick, Lakeena. It looks like if everything goes right, he's going to be. I'm talking about Darnell Wright. He's going to be your starting right tackle. Opposite of Braxton Joseph, is going to be a starting left tackle to help protect Justin Fields. And that's what this team needs right now. Now they can go work on against some defensive players, i.e. pass rushers, then you need a run stopper.
Absolutely. So, like I said, we'll talk more about this when we go talk to our buddy Herb Howard from the Bigs, coming up at the top of the hour. But let's talk about the rest of the draft. Of course, your top 5, Bryce Young from Alabama, not a big surprise, ended up going to Carolina. Texans, some people thought that maybe they were going to go quarterback, but CJ Stroud ended up going to Houston. I think people also got to remember too, and our buddy Twan Staley from New York Daily News, who covers the Jets, friend of the show, said it. Look, it's Lion, and we've been saying it for months. It's Lion season, so for people who thought that the Texans were not going to pick the quarterback, I think they pulled a fast one on y'all. Will Anderson, of course, in question. Well, yeah, and Texas, and speaking of Texas, they actually also traded back up to right after that pick. They ended up getting Will Anderson Jr., of course, the edge rusher from Alabama. Not a big sort of a big surprise, but if I think Houston was able to get a quarterback and an edge rusher, I think that's actually pretty good if you're Houston. Indy ended up selecting Anthony Richardson. It'll be interesting to see how he does in that new system with a whole new coaching staff. That's going to be interesting too, from Florida. Devon Witherspoon from Illinois. Kind of a little bit of surprise, but there was some buzz about him maybe going as top 5 or top 10. Of course, the our American corner from Illinois. We talked about him last year, this past season, college football season. One of the reasons why he was able, Illinois, surprised a lot of people last year. So not a big surprise he went in the top 10. Paris Johnson ended up going to Arizona. Arizona actually traded back. So they got their guy Paris Johnson, to help protect Kyler Murray once he comes back from Ohio State. Not a big, kind of a big surprise, but unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of Bears fans were hoping that he'd be there at 9, but that ended up not being the case. Tyree Wilson, another edge rusher from Texas Tech, all Big 12, going to the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. A little bit of surprise here. Bijan Robinson ended up going to Texas, from Texas, ended up going to Atlanta. That's interesting.
Yeah, Atlanta had issues running the football last year. From that perspective, I get it, but I wondered if they felt they needed to take him because he was the best player on the board.
Yep.
But we'll probably never know. But I think it was a decent selection by him.
I think it wasn't too bad. Corey talked about Jalen Carter, of course, from Philly, and of course the Bears go around the top 10. The Bears get, of course, Darnell Wright, they were around the top 10 there. So we'll get to the rest of the first round in a second. But any big surprises so far that you saw from within the top 10?
Not within the top 10. I want to get to the number 12 pick, and I will jumpstart that now since we have a couple minutes left before we break for the bottom of the hour. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back out of Alabama, Detroit selected him at number 12. I know many people assume that David Montgomery, the former Bears running back who signed with the Lions in the offseason, he's going to get the majority of the carries. But let's be real here, Lakeena. The running game, even though some people may tell you that it's still not worth anything, it's still worth something. But the days of your running backs gaining over 1,100, 1,200 yards, so those days are over. And this trend has been happening for the last, I'd say, 10, 15 years, a 2 or 3 running back system. And some people said that Mr. Gibbs may be a goal line situational runner or a third down runner. We'll see what happens. But I think this would help David Montgomery. We all know David Montgomery is the top 5 running back in the league as far as avoiding contact, and he's a tough runner. But I don't think it's a bad pick for Detroit. I know, are they going to cut DeAndre Swift or are they going to move him somewhere else? We'll see. But it's a crowded backfield in Detroit.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I know some people were kind of making fun of this pick, but they may have said, they may have something here. So we'll see. I like this pick for the Green Bay Packers. Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, the edge rusher. I think he's probably one of the best edge rushers after Will Anderson, and I think this is definitely a big steal for Green Bay because their defense was not very good last year. So I really like this pick for Green Bay. Broderick Jones from Georgia, their other O-line guy. These are going to Pittsburgh. Solid pick, I think. Will McDonald, the 4 from Iowa State, another edge rusher that was getting a lot of buzz. They're going to the Jets. Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State, going to Washington. Some of a little bit of surprise. There was some buzz maybe about he could be late first rounder, early second rounder. We'll see. This is probably one of the steals of the draft for the Patriots. Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, all Pac-12, second team All-American corner. Probably one of the better defensive guys, corner guys in the country. So, Bill Belichick might have gotten a gold mine here. Jack Campbell, another pick, Detroit, another linebacker from Iowa. I kind of like that pick for them. I mean, like I said, defense was a big issue, so he could probably be on the front 7 alongside Aiden Hutchinson. So that could be a nice 7 there. Kalijah Kancey from Pittsburgh, going to Tampa Bay. I mean, the Tampa Bay needs to rebuild that defense. So, especially with Gerald McCoy retiring, I think that's probably it's probably a good replacement for him. What about this pick? Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State, I should say, a wide receiver for Seattle. You know how much Pete Carroll loves his wide receivers.
Yes, and it's going to be opposite of DK Metcalf. They're going to bring him along slowly. So I like that pick for Seattle, especially the helping out with Geno Smith, who got who got a Pro Bowl selection last year, throwing over 30 touchdowns, helping Seattle get back to the playoffs. I like this next pick that we call them the San Diego Chargers of Los Angeles on this show. The Chargers. Arnold Schwarzenegger. They selected Quentin Johnson out of TCU. That's a huge pick over there, especially they've been dealing with injuries at the wide receiver position, i.e. my guy Keenan Allen for the last couple of years. And so I think that's another body they can use in the wide receiver department on the depth chart. And Jordan Addison with that 24th pick for the Minnesota Vikings from USC. He basically replaces Adam Thielen.
Yeah, that's basically kind of a younger version of Allen Thielen. I mean, also you skipped a pick there. Zay Flowers from Boston College, all ACC wide receiver. I think, look, you can never have too many weapons in Baltimore. They need those, especially since Mr. Lamar Jackson got a nice little raise. We'll get to that in a bit. Deontay Banks from Maryland, a solid corner, was second team All Big 12. Jackson Kincaid from Utah, very big, physical tight end. Definitely, another weapon for Josh Allen to throw to. So that was a good pick by Buffalo. Mozzie Smith from Michigan. One of the reasons why Michigan got as far as they did again last year, all second team All Big 10. Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, O-lineman. Miles Murphy from Clemson, going to Cincinnati. Harrison ended up going to Jacksonville. I should have said that first. Brian Breezy from Clemson, a defensive tackle. He goes to the Saints. Nolan Smith, an edge rusher from Georgia. Here's a guy that a lot of people thought that probably could have been a top 10 or top 15 pick, but there was some injury concerns. He has a finger injury, so people were kind of wondering about that, but he hasn't fallen to Philly. So Philly got a nice little pick so far. And
yeah,
of course,
he joins Jalen Carter, his college teammate.
Yep. So nice front seven there for the Eagles. And also last but certainly not least, Phillies Eduka Uzuma, the edge rusher from Kansas State, is going to Kansas City.
Yeah, and that's your first round of selections from last night. The second and third round selections will take place tonight at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time on ESPN, ABC, and NFL Network. Of course, rounds 4 through 7 will take place tomorrow, Saturday, at 11 a.m. on ABC, ESPN, and NFL Network. That's the draft. Lakeena, I'll just give my top two teams that had the great night in the first round: the Houston Texans and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I say Philly had I'll say also to Houston and Philly. I think Minnesota too. I think they got a steal. I think from. I really feel that he can. I gotta go back to see who.
Jordan Addison.
I think Addison, like I said, was all Pac-12. I should say, definitely a guy that could make a big impact right away. Especially, of course, Adam Thielen being gone. Same as Zay Flowers. I really think that Baltimore got another weapon that for Lamar Jackson to throw to. So. I think they had a nice pick so far. But we'll talk more about this. We talked to our good buddy Herb Howard later on in the show at the top hour. But we're gonna go playoffs after this break, right? Yeah, after this break, we'll talk NBA, and we may, if we have time, we'll talk some NHL too. But yeah, I think both playoffs are a little bit crazy. We had some upsets and some pretty interesting things happening too on both fronts. So Sidney Brown, Lakeena McGee, Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Playoff talk coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver. And I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Oh, sorry. Welcome back to Second City Sports on this fun Friday fun edition, our last one for the month of April. Live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's Lakeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow Akeem McGee on the Twitter and Akeem McGee on the IG.
We have less than 90 minutes left of this extravaganza we call a sports talk radio show. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can always hit us up in the comments section or at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions or comments in the comments section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Before we move on, we got to say hello to our good buddy, Money Earning Mount Vernon family. Nice to see you again. He says, I see the Bears learn from Sam Hurd, the Bears from Franklin Saint and Tank Johnson. Gosh. So they went with a decent tackle from the Volunteers. As we said in our last segment, I like the pick. They need some help in protecting Justin Fields, and to see if Fields is the next guy to take the Bears forward and lead them back to prominence. And Vernon also follow with a comment. You dance every commercial break. Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. We like the music that Sean Sierra produces when we return. So we love it. We're a whole lot of fun. You know that about us. We're going to keep bringing you that. So thank you, Vernon, for checking in on the comment section. You can do that too at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. All right, Lakeena, let's move on to the NBA playoffs. We have 2 Game 6s that we're going to preview for you coming up. But Lakeena, last night, the Atlanta Hawks were sent home fishing. That's because the Boston Celtics beat them in Atlanta 128-120. Jaylen Brown finished with the game high at 32 points, and while Trae Young scored 30 for the Atlanta Hawks. Jason Tatum got out his funk, came up big with some big buckets in that second half, especially late in the game last night. Those pesky Atlanta Hawks are now going home for the summer.
Yeah, shout out to our buddy Spiro Diaz who had to call this game, of course, with Steve Smith, but on TNT. But it was only a game on tap yesterday. But I mean, I loved Tatum's interview with Stephanie Reddy afterwards. He said that he actually apologized to Janet Jackson because there was supposed to have been a Janet Jackson concert going on there in Atlanta.
Miss Jackson, even nasty.
last night. So of course, we saw what happened. Trae Young a couple of nights before hit that big 3-pointer to help extend the game to another game here, but they made sure. Tatum said they made sure they took care of business, and they did. 30 points for him, as you said, 32 points for them now. Mask Jaylen Brown. My God, I think he's trying to audition for the new Batman. I guess since in case Robert Pattinson doesn't work out as the new Batman. But that's a whole different thing. But yeah, I mean, look, if you're the Celtics, they're now 23-1, I should say, when Tatum and Brown both score at least 30 points, including the playoffs. That's the best win percentage by a duo all time, which is a minimum of 20 games. Of course, that's MJ and Scotty. They did 18. They're 18-2. You got to go back to Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, third on the list. Of course, Shaq and Kobe are in fourth. But they really needed it because they didn't want to have to afford another game 6. So yeah, I'm sure Boston stopped messing around and actually hit the big shots when they needed to.
Yeah, also too, just taking a look at the stat sheet, these two teams were evenly matched. It was actually a well-played ball game. Only 10 turnovers for Atlanta compared to Boston's 7. In the rebounding department, Boston had a +2 edge at 47-45. But I thought the key here was 3-point shooting. Both teams shot it exactly at 42%. Remember, Atlanta struggled from that department, especially early in the series. They got hot once they got back home to Atlanta, especially these last 3 games before last night. But Boston's big-time players, their superstars, came up big last night, and I think that was the difference in the game. Boston's just overall a better team.
Yes, they actually play like it. So, yeah, of course. Boston, they play Philadelphia. That the first game of that series, doesn't start, I believe, until Monday. So, of course, Joel Embiid with that knee injury got a couple of days extra rest. So, I'm sure that he was happy with that for a little bit. Now, going into Wednesday's games, of course, some pivotal game 5s. Golden State pulled away from Sacramento 123-116. I feel like this is the experience. The experience of the Warriors are starting to kind of show a little bit. Steph had 31 points. Clay had 25. Andrew Wiggins helped out with 20. Draymond got
That was
20.
key right there. Andrew
Yeah.
Wiggins.
Yeah, and of course, Draymond had to kick in 21 off the bench. So I think that the experience is starting to show here, and I feel like that's really gonna be the reason why the Warriors, should they win tonight, I think that'll probably be the key here. And I feel like we're starting to show a little bit. The Kings have missed a lot of big shots as of late. I mean, De'Aaron Fox had 24 in that game, but he missed a lot of key shots. Same thing with Malik Monk, 21 off the bench, but still couldn't get those big shots to hit. So that's really been the key. And like I said, I think the lack of experience is starting to show.
Also, so even though De'Aaron Fox is dealing with that finger injury, he still showed up. Domantas Sabonis looks like he's been affected more with that Game 2 incident, that stomp incident from Draymond Green, than Draymond Green himself. But like you said, give Sacramento credit. They did not quit. They went down without a fight, but they just couldn't pull it off. Steph Curry made some big buckets on Wednesday in the closing minutes of Game 5. Also, too, as I mentioned, you mentioned Andrew Wiggins. He needs to be that third guy like he was last year, especially during the finals when they pulled away against Boston to win that championship. So the supporting players are key at this time of year for basketball. We know what Clay can do. We know what Steph can do. We know what Draymond can do as being the emotional leader of the team. But Andrew Wiggins goes as far as the Warriors can take them. Now, looking at the stats from Wednesday, Sacramento, what I thought cost them was they had 19 turnovers and they could not shoot the ball from downtown. They only shot it for the game at 29% clip. So that's not going to get it done. You notice when they shot the ball well, especially during the first two games of the series, early in the series, they won outright. But I felt like, I usually don't say this phrase, but I felt like if Sacramento would have won that game on Wednesday, this series would have went 7. But if the Warriors would win, I think they'll close it out in game 6. I think they'll do that tonight. So I think the Warriors, now, can they go to Sacramento and win a game 7? Sure. But I think them being at home tonight, they sense the blood in the water. I think they're going to finish off the Kings tonight.
Yeah, I think this will definitely be interesting. We'll see what happens with that. Now, of course, probably some would say this would be probably the bigger upset of the playoffs so far. Miami becomes the first play-in team from the play-in to be the number 1 seed. They beat Milwaukee 128-126. Jimmy Bucket strikes again. 42 points for Mr. Butler, including some big shots in overtime. That's actually tied. That 42 points actually ties D Wade for the most in a series clinching win in Heat history. And it's actually Butler's also 8th 40-point performance in the postseason with Miami, which passes D Wade for the most in franchise history. So I mean, you could look at this whole series in different ways. Big, Jimmy, hitting some big buckets. He hit the big crazy shot that sent to overtime. He made some big shots. Also, Bam did as well in overtime to ice it. And but the Bucks definitely didn't help themselves. They didn't call a time, but they would have had a half second after Jimmy hit that one shot, that crazy one-handed shot. Then they had a couple of chances to perhaps maybe tie it or even win it. So I don't know. I mean, whatever, but it's just, I don't know what to say about this series. I mean, he definitely earned this series, but the Bucks just weren't very good.
Yeah, they had a 16-point lead in the fourth quarter and they blew it. I was listening to one of the national podcasts, and they were talking about during the late stages of the game that Jimmy Butler, in particular, when that Chris Middleton of the Milwaukee Bucks, they had him in pick and roll situations, and Chris Middleton couldn't guard Jimmy, or no one on the Bucks could guard Jimmy buckets on the pick and roll situation. So that's why he took over. And this is real. We talk about playoff Rondo. We talked about Paul George when he was healthy a couple years ago when the Clippers went to the Western Conference Finals, playoff PG. This Jimmy Bucket's playoff cape time is real because he shows up in the big moments and he cannot be denied when he's on fire like that. Shout out to our guy Vernon once again. Just for the record, the Bulls lost in that Jimmy Butler Zach LaVine sweepstakes, quote unquote. Just get a bomb and blow up the team. I know he's talking about the Bulls. We'll get to the Bulls at another time. But Jimmy Butler has carried this Miami Heat team on his back ever since he got there a few years ago. Of course, Miami went to the NBA Finals in the bubble 3 years ago. Of course, they almost returned there last year. If it wasn't for a bad Jimmy Butler playing Game 7 at home, they would have beat the Celtics and went back to the finals. But he's just a primetime player. We talk about Bam Adebayo, Lakeena, as being that second scorer on that team. But other players have stepped up with Gabe Vincent, Max Struss, especially from DePaul, and also to Duncan Robinson in the absence of Tyler Herro, who got injured in Game 1 of this series. So it's all been a team effort for the Miami Heat following Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be the key here too, especially in their next series. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I think Miami. I think they show you that look, Miami's actually pretty good. I mean, look, they had their struggles throughout the season. People were wondering, especially after they got blown out in Atlanta at home in that first play-in game. A lot of people thought that they were pretty much done for. But look, Jimmy Butler has put this team on his back, and look, now they're going to the second round. So we'll see what happens there. Now,
I want to ask you real quick, Lakeena. What did you think about Giannis's performance?
Comments? I was just about to ask.
Yeah, his comments and his performance.
Well, I think Giannis, you could tell that back was bothering him. I mean, that you could kind of tell as he was kind of getting hunched over, especially he couldn't hit his free throws and everything. So I'm a little bit concerned that maybe the back was bothering him a little bit more than he let on. Now, as far as
10 to 23 from the free throw line.
Yeah, that's not going to help. His comments. I mean, I know people were praising him, but I'm like, whoa. I mean. Look, I'm sure there are a couple of NBA finals that Magic would like back.
1984,
83 and 84. I'm sure Bird would love to have the 85 Lakers Celtics series. I'm sure he would like to have that back. I'm sure if you ask LeBron, I'm sure there are a couple of 2 or 3 of those NBA finals trips that he made. I'm sure he'd like to have a couple of those back. So, I mean, look, I know they won the title in 2019. I think there were other things that kind of transpired that got him to that point. I mean, I know Giannis has said some things lately that he might retire, he might leave Milwaukee, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I know people were praising the comments, but I'm just like, well, I mean, look, I'm sure if you ask all the other all-time greats, I'm sure there were a lot of NBA finals, especially if they made multiple appearances. Look, I'm sure Barkley will love that 93 NBA finals.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit kind of much there, but what do you think? What do you think about Giannis's comments?
I agree with our guy Jonathan Hood from ESPN Chicago. He said it very eloquently on his morning show the other day with David Kaplan. Athletes look at things very, very differently from us diehard fans, and I get it. But you talk about Michael Jordan, who wanted to win at everything, not just from an individual standpoint, but from a team standpoint. And I get where Giannis is coming from, but if you have a team like Giannis has in Milwaukee, and your team has a realistic shot at winning the title, if you come up short, it is a failure. No, you're not going to win the title every year. That's unrealistic. You're not going to win it every year. But if you do your best, or say you didn't overcome enough obstacles, or you just cruise and go big headed, you failed. So I get where Giannis is coming from, but like you said, I don't think those athletes that you just mentioned were satisfied of not having enough championships. All of them wanted to win, obviously, but if you're a real competitor and take your game to the extra mile, you will see it as a failure. You gave everything you had, but just kept come up short.
And then look, I just thought about another one too. I'm sure Jerry West and God rest his soul, Elgin, but would love to have a couple of those series against the Knicks back. I'm just saying.
Jerry West lose the Boston 6 times, 7 times. Oof.
Good Lord, yeah. And Willis Reed again. We didn't talk about him when he passed, but God rest his soul too. But yeah. So that pretty much covers it. This is Second City Sports on Chicago. Lakeena McGee, Sydney Brown with you as we talk some NBA playoffs here now. This Game 5, Memphis really needed this win more than the Lakers did, but I think if you're the Lakers, you missed a shot at clinching it. They went on a 19-1 run late in the fourth. I turned from it. It was back and forth. I think that the Grizzlies were like 3 or 4, and I thought the Lakers still have a shot, so let me turn away for a second. Then I they had to win on a 19-1 run. And I guess they were pulled away for a 116-99 in that Game 5. Desmond Bane had 33. Of course, Ja had 31. But I just feel like look, the Grizzlies played like a team that needed this win, to avoid elimination. You can kind of tell that LeBron's I don't want to say he was lackadaisical, because I know he had a great 20-point, 20 rebound performance It was his first time doing that, which is a little bit crazy if you think about it, but that's crazy that he has never done that. But in this game here, I really feel like, look, the Grizzlies need this win more than Lakers did, and they got it. But if you're the Lakers, you better win tonight, because if you don't, or tomorrow night, because if you don't want to come back to Memphis for a game 7. You just don't.
18 points is what the Lakers had from the bench in Game 5. That's not going to get it done. Right. On the flip side, Anthony Davis had a great game, 31 points, 19 rebounds. Austin Reeves, 17 points. D'Angelo Russell with 11. I thought he should have did a little bit more. But like you said, it came down to energy. And Memphis was at home. They needed a little bit, way more than the Lakers did, because Memphis is trying to hold off and stave off elimination. And you got that inspirational performance the other night. Just looking at the stat sheet here, of course, Memphis shot the ball better than the Lakers from three-point land at a 35% clip. And also in the turnover department, Memphis had 11 turnovers, but the Lakers had 13. And of course, Memphis shot the ball at a 45% clip overall. So Memphis had the total package and the total hustle, and now they have the momentum going back for a Game 6 tonight in Los Angeles.
Like I said, if you're LeBron and AD, you don't want to have to go back to Memphis for a Game 7. So I think you better try to win tonight. Now, going to this last one with the Knicks, they beat the Cavs 106-95 to clinch their series. It's their first series win, playoff series, when you got going back to 2013. And entering this postseason, the Knicks had only won one playoff series since 2001. That's the fewest of any team during that span. So, I'm already hearing people say that, the Knicks are going to go to the conference finals. Like, oh, good Lord, I don't want to do these Knicks Twitter. I swear, I just see more insufferable than usual. But look, Karis LeVert only had 17 points for the Cavs. Where were you? Jared Allen only 4 points. Well, what? Come on now, where were you? Evan Mobley 6 points. Really, dude? Like, what? Where? Look, okay, look, I know. Okay, look, Jalen Brunson's been a great pickup for them. He had 23 points. RJ Barrett's been really solid too, 21 points. But I just feel like they, of course, Quigley's been a great pickup for the Knicks too. He had 19, but off the bench. But I really feel like the Cavs could have done more in this series. They just couldn't do it. And I feel like, the Cavs, I don't want to say they were frauds, but this is one reason why I really felt that this Cavs team, had their shots to have maybe, especially in that third game, they have to maybe, take the lead, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah, it was a failure of the supporting cast, as you mentioned, from Cleveland. Picking up Donovan Mitchell was huge for them, and that's why they got into the playoffs. But as you mentioned, the supporting cast for Cleveland failed to show up. You only had 19 points off your bench in an elimination game. That's not going to get it done. On the flip side, for the Knicks, Julius Randle still bothered by that ankle injury. I know he had 13 points and 4 rebounds. We'll see if he plays Sunday, as they'll get ready to tussle with the Miami Heat in that second round of series as it opens up on Sunday afternoon on ABC. But also, you mentioned Emmanuel quickly, Lakeena. You mentioned Josh Hart. He was picked up at the trade deadline, who has been a huge difference for that team. Don't forget about Obi Toppin. He was one of those players that didn't play when Tom Thibodeau decided to play a shorter rotation in the last couple of months of the season. But he's been very impactful for this Knicks team in these last 3 games. I know he scored 12 points in the clincher, but Obi Toppin has been one of those young guys has stepped up and made a huge difference for this Knicks team.
Yeah, he really has. It's been a supporting cast too. Now, again, can they keep it up? That's going to be the thing, because they will face Miami, and look, they've had their battles during the regular season. I think the Knicks won like 4-2 or 3-2 or something like that. So this could look. This series could go. I know people already got the Knicks penciling MS going to the Eastern Conference Finals, but it's just like, let's slow down here. Of course, people underestimated Miami against Milwaukee, so I think people need to kind of just stop, underestimating them. And I'm sure, look, Butler versus Tibbs, I know that's going to be another matchup that people are going to be going for. So interesting to see what happens there. Now they actually start play next week, Sunday, I believe. So let's go to the weekend schedule. Of course, this should tonight. Of course, Sacramento and Golden State, 7 o'clock. An early start for all you guys in the Bay Area on ESPN. Another ESPN doubleheader here, second game of that. Another clincher potentially in the West. You got Memphis and the Lakers. So where do you see both these games going tonight?
I think both those series end tonight. I'll start with the Warriors and Kings first. Sacramento, we know about the finger injury to De'Aaron Fox, but who's going to help out Malik Monk, Domantas Sabonis? I'm looking for to see him have a monster game tonight as they go back to the Bay Area. Let's see what Harrison Barnes does as a veteran leader for that Sacramento Kings team. So I'm looking at Harrison Barnes and Domantas Sabonis first for Sacramento to pull off a Game 6 road win. Now for the second game.
Should be no. I just want piggyback what you said about that. I think the experience is going to help them. I think if you're the Warriors, you don't want to have to take a chance having to go back to Sacramento, especially if you're able to get that big win on the road. So yeah, try to clinch tonight and just keep it moving.
Yeah, for the second game, let's see if Dylan Brooks can stop being a schoolyard. But yeah, stop yapping and start playing with some passion, i.e., his offensive game. Let's see what Desmond Bane continues that hot scoring like he did in Game 5. John Morant, let's see what difference maker he can be. On the flip side for the Lakers, Anthony Davis continues to dominate inside. Let's see Dennis Schroeder, Austin Reeves, and D'Angelo Russell step up in the scoring department, especially from the bench. If the bench helps out with the Lakers tonight, they'll win this. I'm putting the magic number at 20. If the Lakers have 20 points from their bench, they'll win.
Same thing. I think they really need to get their supporting cast to help out. If you're LeBron and AD, as the rest of that cast, you don't want to end up having to go back to Memphis. So I would say, look, take the momentum. Try to end this tonight. That way, keep it moving, get a little bit of rest before, because you only get every other day. Well, except the traveling day from here on out after these first round games. So I would say try to get the win. Try to rest as much as you can. Now going into tomorrow, after the first game of the Western Conference semifinals, I should say, should be going here. Get number 4 Phoenix because number 1 Denver. Now I'm already seeing like some people say Denver in 6, but I think KD starting to show a little bit of we're starting to see that the old KD before his injury, so I'm thinking that could be the key. And like I said, I think it's gonna be the supporting cast. We know that it's got a great supporting cast, but so does the Suns. So, but I've been saying this. We say it in our roundtable, playoff roundtable. I think DeAndre Ayton is going to be the key. If he can, I know it's going to be hard, but Tim Nikola Jokic, that's going to be a hard task. But if you can kind of tame him, perhaps maybe have other guys step up. If CP3 can show you a little bit of the CP3 that we saw, we've been seeing through that first series against the Clippers. I think the Suns. I'm taking the Suns in 7. I think this is going to go 7.
Yeah, you stole my pick. I have Phoenix in 7 as well. On the flip side for Denver, their supporting cast. Mace, I'm looking forward to watching this series. Bruce Brown and Michael Porter Jr. I want to see what those two guys have as far as impact is concerned. We all know that Nikola Jokic is going to bring it. We all know that Jamal Murray is going to bring it. But I'm looking at Bruce Brown and Michael Porter Jr. for Denver for this series. On the flip side for Phoenix, who's going to step up in their bench since their lack of depth has been exposed so far.
Yeah, we'll see. That's going to be the key. We'll see if the Nuggets can expose that lack of depth that the Sun has. I'll go into Sunday's matchup again. Lakers and Grizzlies or Warriors and Sacramento. Those would be Game 7s if necessary, so we're not going to worry about that. Miami and New York, that's going to be the first game of their series. They'll be at noon on ABC. I think for me, it's really going to be the supporting cast. I think, Hero not being there. I think, look, Duncan Robinson, Max Truss, all of them have to step up. We'll see if Kyle Lowry can have a little bit more left in him. I think if Jimmy, they're going to need to help Jimmy out because he can only carry this team so much. So they're going to need him. They're going to, Bam needs to step up as well. Nick's same thing. I mean, we'll see if that, Julius Randle injury is still, going to be an issue. We'll see if, that. Look, they had their battles this year, so I'm not just going to give it to the Knicks. I'm going to say, look, I want to say if this could go 7. I'm going to say the Heat because I think, look, I'm not a believer in the Knicks just yet. I'm just not.
I think the ankle injury to Julius Randle will be my reason why I'm not going to pick the Knicks in this series. If he was healthy, I would pick them. They're a slightly better team with him healthy, but the way that Jimmy Butler's playing right now, those role players continue to step up for the Heat. They can go to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think it's going to be a long, drawn-out series. I also have Miami in 7.
Stop copying me, Sid.
No, you're copying me.
or great minds, depending how you look at it. So, hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 straight ahead. Of course, our buddy Herb Howard from the Bigs will recap Bears and NFL draft. What's ahead for the Bears and the rest of the NFL draft. And day 2 and 3, coming up tonight and tomorrow. Also, too, we'll do some baseball. Not a good weekend for both Chicago teams, and a great story emerging in Pittsburgh. We'll talk about that. Also, too, some NHL playoff news here as well. A lot of weird things happening in that as well. So, lots to do still. Hour number 2. Lakeena McGee, Sydney Brown, Second City Sports. Sports on Chicago with our buddy Herb Howe from the Bigs coming up right after this.
No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean, you're
Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Move it!
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Friday Fun Friday edition, the last one for the month of April. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid, that's Lakeena. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter in the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow Lakeena McGee on the Twitter and Lakeena's over again the IG.
Our guest Herb Howard is coming up in a bit from the Bigs. He's going to hop on with us to talk of the Bears' first-round draft pick from last night, Mr. Darnell Wright from the University of Tennessee. He's going to hop on with us coming up. But in the meantime, in between time, if you have any questions or comments for us, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions or comments in the comments section. Lakeena will get the up on the screen for you. Lakeena, as we wait for our guest, we discussed these names with our good buddy Eric DeWater from Windy City Gridiron at around this time last week as far as who the Bears should draft. Of course, rounds 2 and 3 would take place tonight. Of course, the rest of the rounds 4 through 7 will take place tomorrow from Kansas City. But I think Brian Poles, the GM for the Bears, will make this a heavy defensive draft, especially on the defensive line, because as I said before, this infrastructure of the Bears is still being built as we speak. And I still have a couple of names that I want to throw out at you, see what you think if the Bears have a chance to pick up any of these players. I'll start with the pass rushers. Derek Hall out of Auburn, I really like him. He's not your typical beefy linebacker, but he has some speed that can rush the quarterback. He can also get upfield, and that's something that this Bears team needs. Also, you have Keon White out there for Georgia Tech. Also, Macy Smith out of Michigan. He's a defensive tackle. And, of course, I think he's a linebacker, B.J. Ojulari. He's from LSU.
Yeah, I think I like those names. I feel like it's really gonna depend on like what the other teams decide to do. I mean, you look at where the Bears draft in that second round. I think that's gonna. Yeah, I would be surprised if Detroit tries to after. We'll see if they get one of those edge rushers. I mean, they could probably use another edge rusher. The Arizona for the trade from Houston yesterday, they could probably they got a lot of needs too. I could see them squeezing in there as well. And getting one of those edge rushers. Look, you can never have too many of those. The Rams, they got to think about maybe perhaps Aaron Donald might be retiring after this year. So, that might be another team that might do it. So it'll be, like I said, he'll have his pick. I'm talking about polls. They'll have his pick of guys. But like I said, it's really going to depend on who's going to be there by the time the Bears select. I think they're about 11 or 12, I believe, in the second round. I mean, so it's going to be interesting to see what teams decide what to do. They trade back again. Do they trade a little bit further up? I mean, we just don't know. So that's really, to me, that's going to be the key on what the Bears do in those late rounds. I mean, they don't pick again until 22. So could I see Paul perhaps maybe do another trade, perhaps getting back up to that top 10 to get one of those edge rushers? I don't know, but like I said, it'll be interesting what they do, because I feel like it's really going to depend on who's going to be there from at 22 in the second round.
Yes, and we'll see what those names are for the Bears. If they really like somebody, I can see Ryan Poles moving up, or maybe moving back if his guy's not there. We take the second best player as far as defensive ends on the board to fit that 3 technique that head coach Matt Eberflus likes to run. So we'll see what happens with that. Just a few names as far as defensive backs, of course. This Bears team needs bodies right now. So as we said, they have 9 picks remaining in this year's draft. As far as the top defensive backs remaining on the board, Julius Brents out of Kansas State, Cam Smith out of South Carolina, and Ja'Cory Bennett out of Maryland. I don't know the Bears will be in position to select any of those guys, but it'll be nice to have one of them in a Bears uniform.
I've been seeing Kansas perhaps going in the second round, or late in the second round, so that he might not be there for the Bears. Unless they do take him, go ahead and take him in that second round if he is there. So that might be kind of a tricky one there. But like I said, it's really going to depend. Like I said, I would be surprised if Poles, does a fast one and perhaps maybe sneak in another pick. Maybe get another couple more picks, to get back into a little bit closer to that second round. We'll see. I mean, there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing going on. So I'm wondering what's going to be his mindset is, get that defensive, front and pick get those holes plugged in. So again, we'll see. I like all 3 of these names. That last guy from East Carolina, I know our buddy Mark Harmon's been saying the same thing about him as well. So it'll be interesting to see, and our buddy Antoine Staley, he's an East Carolina guy, so I'm sure he'll have a lot of great things to say about him. But I'll be interested to see what they do. Like I said, it's really going to depend on who's going to be there for him to take.
Yeah, so we'll see what the Bears and Ryan Poles do is with their 9 remaining selections in this year's NFL draft. You're listening to Second City Sports on Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you as we await our guest. Lakeena, Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky. Everybody thought he was going to be selected within those first 5 picks in last night's draft. He's still in the green room. We assume that he's going to get selected tonight. I was listening to Colin Cowherd before we went on air today, and he said that he talked to unnamed 2 executives last night. He said that some of those teams didn't like the way that Will Levis showed themselves as far as his personality is concerned, flexing his biceps, going around thinking that he's big-headed. I'm just paraphrasing here. And basically, he has the skills. You've been hearing his name for the last few weeks creeping up in these mock drafts. But when it all came down to it, Mr. Richardson was selected by the Colts, not Will Levis. Now, Will Levis looks like he's going to be this year's Aaron Rodgers sitting in that green room. We assume he's going to get selected tonight. But what did you think about Will Levis not being selected in the first round last night?
I'm not surprised. I mean, I know there was a Reddit post that came out that said he was telling people he was going to go number 1 to Carolina. I don't know where that person heard that from, but I didn't see it. But
it's Lions season.
I mean, look, I think Well, I would say to people that if anybody thought he was going to go in the first, or at least in the top 10, I mean, I would have thought maybe Minnesota would have taken him late in the first round, but they didn't. So maybe they thought, okay, maybe he'll be there maybe in the second round or third round or whatever. But I think it's really, look, he puts mayonnaise in his coffee. I mean, you don't trust a person when they put mayonnaise in their coffee. I question that person's integrity and their demeanor. So like maybe that's probably what scared a lot of teams.
What about ketchup on a hot dog?
I don't care. Ketchup on a hot dog, whatever. Like that doesn't trigger me other folks, but whatever, it is what it is with the ketchup. But yeah, I mean, look, he'll I'm sure he'll get picked somewhere. Maybe look, I mean, most of the rounds, I mean, if you're going to the second round, I mean, Pittsburgh, do they need a quarterback? Arizona doesn't need one. Maybe Detroit might pick him. I don't know. Indy already got their guy in Anthony Richardson, so like I don't know who else you're gonna get. I don't know where else he could go. I mean, I know Minnesota. I think they don't draft. I think till like late in the second round, so maybe he goes there. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, like this is sort of the type of thing that can humble a guy. So we'll see. This can kind of like makes it a little bit. It's gonna be interesting to see where he goes. But yeah, I mean, like I said, most of those first 5 or 6 picks. I mean, they really don't need a quarterback right now. So. I don't know, but yeah, well, we'll see what happens. But with Mitchell Davis, another name that's being, Joey Porter Jr. If you guys remember, I saw his journey. They had like rookie record to the NFL. Then of course his dad, of course, is Joey Porter.
We're getting old, Lakeena.
I know, right? If he has a kid old enough to be drafted in the NFL, I think look, he's a corner. I know some people he didn't play a lot of games. I think that's really like some people thought that maybe could have been a late first rounder. That's not the case, but Marlon Humphreys, a lot of people compare it to him. He's very long and a great corner, and I'm sure his dad, who also played defense, taught him well. So I'm wondering, from Penn State, I should say, Joey Porter Jr. So he could probably be a potential steal from somebody. Michael Mayer, I know our guy Sean Davis loves this kid from this tight end from Notre Dame. I think that he could be a great pickup for somebody's. As I said, I think I had Hendon Hooker. I know that's a name that's being floated around too. I know he's recovered from an ACL injury from the quarterback from Tennessee. He could perhaps be a guy once he's all rehabbed. It could be another name that could be a potential steal there. Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss, the wide receiver, he could perhaps be a steal. So yeah, there are a lot of potential guys that could steal. I mean, Jalen Hyatt's still out there too. A lot of people he's going to be a early second rounder anyway. So a lot of those teams, that could be a name to be look out for coming up tonight. Let's see. Yeah, there are like a lot of guys that are still out there. So any team that could probably be happy to take any one of those guys. Now, as far as the Bears are concerned, I mean, look, it'll be interesting to see who's going to be there for them. Do they pick another front seven guy? They'll have their choices. So everyone will have their choice. There's still a lot of great talent out there for everybody in the league.
Yeah, like I said, the Bears need 2 pass rushers. I think they'll pick another offensive lineman because you can't never have enough of those, especially those guys get injured a lot. So I think Ryan Post will select another offensive lineman. They need 2 pass rushers, a defensive tackle, because as we talked about all last season, Lakeena, and throughout this offseason, the Bears struggle to pressure the quarterback, and that's something you need in this league, especially with the kind of quarterback plays that's been going on in the league for a while now with these mobile quarterbacks. So you need some pass rushers that can pressure the quarterback, sack them, and also get upfield. So those are kind of plays that the Bears need, especially with this three technique that the Bears are running. Also, too, will they select a running back in the later rounds, in the 4th or the 5th rounds? We'll see. I know some people said they need another wide receiver. You can always pick that up, but that's not a position of need. You need defensive tackles. You need another offensive lineman. And I think you could pick up a couple of defensive backs as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty heavy defensive draft for the Chicago Bears with their 9 picks remaining in this year's draft.
Well, I know Zach Charbonnet. That's a guy our buddy Randy Cross talked about. Of course, he played at UCLA as well. So, that was sort of like a name is being buzzed around too, perhaps maybe for the Bears to take in the later rounds. We'll see. But like I said, it's going to be interesting though, because like I said, there are still like a lot of needs for this Bears squad. So I don't know what's going to be like the top priority for polls. Like I said, front seven, O-line, more O-line help. I mean, you could probably pick up a wide receiver, in free agency. But like I said, it's going to be interesting. Like I said, it's going to be interesting what they do. I mean, like Cam Smith, I mean, I know he's still, up there too with at South Carolina. That's going to be another name that's going to be floated around too. Yeah, look, there's going to be like a lot of great names. Javarius Martin, the safety from Illinois. That's going to be another name Sidney Brown, not that Sidney Brown, but of course from that not that our Sidney Brown, but some of our the Illinois safety Sidney Brown. Of course, he suffered that knee injury last year, but had a good pre-draft. He's got good motor and quickness. We know how good he is, so we'll see where he goes. So look, there are a lot of names still that the Bears could choose from. So it's all right there, and I think I'm wondering what's going to be kind of the key and the needs. I think so. Like I said, I think we won't know how these guys fare until maybe a couple of years from now. So
yeah,
especially what happened with Velus Jones last year, I think some people are kind of a little bit skeptical of what Poles can do. They scored a good one here in Darnell Wright, but after that, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Now, sticking with the Bears for just a couple of minutes as we await our guest, Herb Powers from the Bigs is coming up in here just shortly. You mentioned Velus Jones Jr. Of course, he was injured last year. It was a hot and cold relationship between him and head coach Matt Eberflus. He did a couple of good things, but he was MIA as far as the offensive package is concerned. He did some things in special teams, but he struggled a bit. I want to see what he does from year 1 to year 2. And joining us right now from It's the Bigs Media, he's there, Chicago Bears reporter. You can follow him on Twitter at Herb Howard 411. Once again, at Herb Howard 411. Here comes the man, the myth, and the legend, the man of the hour, Mr. Herb Howard. Herb, welcome back to the show.
You're far too kind. Thanks for having me again. It's an absolute pleasure to hang out with y'all.
No problem. We're discussing the Bears' first round pick, Mr. Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee. The Bears moved down to select them last night with their first round pick. I saw your comments on the Twitter, and you said you thought they should have selected Jalen Carter. Of course, Philadelphia switched spots with the Bears and selected him at number 9. What are your thoughts about Darnell Wright being selected by Chicago? It looks like everything projects out right. He's going to be your starting right tackle opposite of Braxton Jones, who's going to be a starting left tackle as they try to protect Justin Fields.
Yeah, I think Darnell Wright is a phenomenal pick. I think he checks all the boxes, got all the traits. He's a huge guy. He's got the length for you in terms of the arm length. He's got great feet, great athleticism. He should be able to project well into the outside zone scheme. That's not what they did at Tennessee. But again, the Bears went to Knoxville, put him through a pretty hard workout. They walked away impressed by him. Chris Morgan, the offensive line coach, walked away impressed with him. And so I think that he's going to be a guy that is going to be able to come in, you plug and play at right tackle. He should be a guy that's very productive for you. He's got that mean streak. He did well against a lot of the top prospects in college ball. He obviously played in the SEC, saw what he did against some guys from Georgia, guys from Alabama. I think he's a phenomenal pick. I did like Jalen Carter. I'll be very upfront and honest about that. I like Jalen Carter, and I would have been excited if the Bears picked him, but I also love the pick they made. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I don't think they have to be that way. You can say, I like Jalen Carter, and I would have been excited for the Bears to take Jalen Carter, and also acknowledge that they made a really, really good pick with Darnell Wright. He's going to help the Bears from day one. He's got the right makeup, the right mentality. We talked to him for a little bit over Zoom last night. We're going to talk to him again. He'll be at Hallis Hall at 3:45. But I think that, it's a really, really good pick in a position of need for the Bears. So I think Ryan Poles' staff did a really, really good job. But there's no denying that pick will always be tied to Jalen Carter. You're going to have to – people are going to constantly monitor that thing. So if Jalen Carter turns out to be a perennial Pro Bowl player over the course of the next 5, 6, 8 years, then people are going to look at that thing and say, well, Darnell Wright better be a perennial Pro Bowl player too. And I think that Ryan Poles understands that. He knows that. I think he was comfortable with the decision that he made. It was his decision to make. There were certainly some red flags for his reasons for not wanting Jalen Carter. I know once he was there at 9 and the Bears were sitting there, a lot of people were like, we're going to still get Jalen Carter. After everything that went down, we're still going to get Jalen Carter. And then he moves out. It's like, I don't want him either. And I think that's all of that has to be taken into account. But I also would say, as far as Jalen Carter, him going to Philly is a phenomenal thing for him, right? I think that's a phenomenal space for him to be in. You talk about being in the same room with Fletcher Cox, with Brandon Graham. He's got 3 Georgia teammates that are there with him. I think that's the perfect place for him to come in, get settled, and go to work. And so I want to be clear, what he does or what he becomes in Philly may not have been what he would have done and become in Chicago. It's not the same thing, right? And so, again, I'm on record. I like the kid, his tape. undeniable in terms of some of his skill sets. You also see some of the loafs and things like that, but he has undeniable ability. I will certainly watch him, and the fact of the matter is he'll be tied to this pick for the foreseeable future.
And going back to Carter for a second, having Fletcher Cox, who could be kind of like a mentor or a big brother to him, I think that could definitely help him, with all the character issues that he has going on there too. And like you said, having a lot of his Georgia teammates there, so that's gonna be a dangerous front seven for Philly. So
that's scary, Keenan. That's scary, Keenan. If I was Philly, when he gets there to the facility today, I would have Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham meet him at the door. Like we're gonna walk you in. We're going to take you to your locker room. Your locker is right in between our two lockers, and you're going to be with us going forward. And we're going to show you how this thing is done, and we're going to walk you through everything, every single part of it, because there are questions about his motor. There are questions about his off-field activity. There are questions about his love for the game, his desire to be, to reach his full potential. And so you put him around two professionals who understand what this league is about, and I think it's a good situation for him to be able to succeed. And I don't know that the Bears have – at this point, the same locker room to absorb that type of player. I don't know if they could put him in the same situation that Philly could put him in to succeed. And so we'll see. But I think fair or not, for Ryan Poles, Darnell Wright will continue to be tied to Jalen Carter.
Yeah, whether he likes it or not, unfortunately. Now, how realistic was Paris Johnson for the Bears? There were a lot of Bears fans who wanted him too. They couldn't get Jalen Carter, but Arizona said, "You know what? No, we need some help too." So, but what about day two? Coming up tonight. There are a lot of names that are being floated around. Perhaps they don't pick till 22. I'm talking about the Bears. I know Cam Smith, a couple of other guys that are out there too. So, who do you think is going to be like for guys that Ryan Poles might look at that for that 22nd pick, or could he perhaps maybe trade up or trade back? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's not having another pick to 53 is a huge gap. There's a lot of good players that are going to go between 9 and 53 or 10 and 53, and so the Bears would probably want to get back into that range. Now, I don't know if they're going to do that or not. It will kind of go against what they have been doing in terms of moving back, accumulating more picks, accumulating more assets. I don't know if that's exactly what they want to do. If they do choose to move up, I would be very intrigued by who that prospect is, because that would tell me that they absolutely love the kid, right? Because it hasn't been what they have done. In terms of what I think they will do going forward, I think they'll continue to solidify the trenches, offensive line, defensive line. Now, coming into the draft, I thought they could have done whatever they wanted to. This was I know conventional wisdom was, hey, they're going to get a tackle, and they did get a tackle. But this isn't a team that was a right tackle away from going to the Super Bowl, right? They've got a lot of needs. So if they would have went, running back or wide receiver or whatever, right, I wouldn't have been upset about that at all. That being said, once he's chosen to go into the trenches, I think that gives you some indication about what Ryan Poles wants to do as he continues to paint this picture for himself. And so I would think they would stay there in the trenches, either on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. I think like if a kid like Michael Schmitz from Minnesota, the center's there. If he's there, that makes a lot of sense for the Bears, and you can kind of plug him in there. And now you go left to right with Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins, and you get him in there and, compete with Cody Smith or with Cody Whitehair. And then you got Nate Davis and obviously Darnell Wright. Now you flip that entire offensive line around. So I think that would be something that's very intriguing for them at that point. But we'll just have to see how the board falls.
We're hanging out with our guy, Herb Howard. He's the Chicago Bears beat reporter from Insta Bigs Media right here on Second City Sports, the Friday edition of Sports on Chicago. Sid and Lakeena hanging out with you. You have a question or a comment for our guest, you can go to Sports on Chicago's Facebook page or Sports on Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Herb, as we talked about what the Bears can do for the rest of the draft. Me personally, I think it's going to be a defensive-heavy draft for the Chicago Bears. I'll read out some of these names for you. I don't know if the Bears are going to get them, but I kind of like them a lot. And there's Derek Hall out of Auburn, Keon White, who I really like, out of Georgia Tech, Macy Smith out of Michigan. He's a defensive tackle, and B.J. Ojulari, the linebacker out of LSU. Do you think the Bears have any chance to select any of those guys over the next 2 days?
Yeah, I think they'll have a chance to I think they'll eventually have their shot at those guys. And I think that if they stand pat, some of those guys will come to them. There'll probably be a run on the edge rushers at some point. Me personally, Sid, I'm an inside out guy, right? I like to build from the inside out. And so I still need that defensive tackle. I still need that 3 tech that's going to go in there and be disruptive on a down in, down out basis. I like Benton. There's some guys in there that could be impactful for them at that point. Now, if they see a guy that's kind of falling down the board, and there's always these scenarios where maybe you had like a late first round grade on a guy, and for whatever reason he's just slipping, and then maybe he comes into that range where you feel like you can go up and get him. Now, I don't know where that range is, and I asked Ian Cunningham about this, the Bears assistant GM, the other day. I asked him, where's that range where they may move up into trade for guys, the late 30s, the early 40s? Where is that range where they can say, okay, we feel comfortable moving up from 53 to 42 or 44 or whatever it may be, because we love this prospect so much. They've done a lot of things to accumulate a lot of future assets. They got some bargaining chips that they can trade for, and so I think they're in a good position to be able to do that if they want. It would go against what they have been doing in terms of moving back and stockpiling more future assets. But if there's a guy that think they can't pass and they see him sliding down the board, they may go ahead and pull the trigger and move up.
Do you see them getting a running back in the later rounds? Because I know there were some people that wanted Bijan Robinson for the Bears, and I'm like, okay, that's a little bit much there. But there are some ambitious. Yeah, right. I mean, but there are some guys out there that could be a potential like steal in the later rounds for the Bears. Zach Sharp and that data, UCLA, and a few other guys too. Do you see them perhaps maybe taking a running back maybe in the 5th or 6th rounds?
Yeah, I think the Bears have had a lot of productivity in the mid to later rounds at the running back position. You can go back, to Jordan Howard. You can talk about Tariq Cohen. Khalil Herbert. Like, they've had success hitting on these backs later in the draft, and so I think that they could again explore that as a possibility. It's not a room that you feel like, oh, we can't bring another back into, and so I think that's certainly a possibility for them as well in terms of improving some production in that room. There's some guys that are going to be intriguing, right? As you get down into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, even the 6th round, there'll be some guys that are there that could add to that room. And I think they got a pretty solid room right now as well in terms of production. But if you find a guy there later that you feel can bring some things to that space, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go in that direction at all.
Herb, let's go big picture now to the first round of the draft from last night. Good grades as of this broadcast, but who else did you see as winners from last night's first round?
The Baltimore Ravens. I love them bringing in Zay Flowers. I thought that was a really, really nice pick. You're gonna pair him with OBJ. Obviously, you got the big news about Lamar Jackson. I thought that was really, really good in terms of what they were able to do. There was another team. Who was the other team that I thought did really, really good? I should have written these things down.
Philly, Houston.
Yeah, I love what Philly was able to do in terms of, obviously we talked about Jalen Carter, but then to be able to come back and double down with Nolan Smith and continue to bring in those Bulldogs, like they can just continue to bring in all of those dogs down there. So I think they had a really good draft as well, a really good first round as well. I think some teams were able to get some value later in the draft and find some guys that are really going to be able to help them. And so I think those are a couple of teams. You talk about the Eagles and the Ravens that found themselves well. I think if Zay Flowers was 6'2", 6'3", 215, he would have been the first receiver off the board. He's that good. Like, that kid is dynamic. He's got the heart. He's tough. He can go up and compete for the 50-50 balls. And he's dangerous. He's electric when he gets the ball in his hands. And so, to give Lamar Jackson that kind of talent on the outside, he's already got Mark Andrews, who's an all-pro tight end. You know what he can do with his own legs in terms of Lamar Jackson. You brought in OBJ, and now you got this kid, Zay Flowers, that you can put opposite of OBJ, or you can put him in the slot, and it becomes a matchup nightmare for how you go about dealing with Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers, and Mark Andrews, and the ability for Lamar Jackson to run. Plus, you got DK in the backfield. So there's a lot to like about that pick for the Ravens.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the few bright spots in that Boston College squad the last couple of years. Well, were you surprised, right? Were you surprised about Will Levis's downfall? Do you think he was a top 5? Because after all the buzz that allegedly he was going to be the number 1 pick or the top 5 guys, or were you surprised that he hasn't been selected yet? And who do you think is going to pick him?
No, I'm not surprised that he wasn't, selected. I think that the quarterback market kind of is what it is, and the teams that truly need a quarterback. And so I think once he slid past a certain point, to me, it was obvious that he wasn't going to get picked in the first round. Once you got into, those 20s and mid 20s, who's going to take him then, right? You're talking about all the guys that were, conference finals and they got quarterbacks, right? Who's going to take him? Philly's going to take him? No. Kansas City's going to take him? Absolutely not. Like, who's going to take this kid? The Bengals? No. Like, who's the Buffalo Bills? Like, at that point, you understood he could have left the green room at that point. Like, after like 22, 23, he could have got up and left because you had Dallas with Dak Prescott. You had all these teams that are comfortable in their quarterback position. He could have got up and left. It wasn't going to happen for him. I think that for whatever reason, the hype was kind of driven up on him later in that process. And the same thing kind of happened with Hendon Hooker too. He kind of came on late, but I think he kind of understood there's a good chance I won't go in the first round. With Will Levis, that wasn't the case. He thought he would, and he was in the green room. That's an uncomfortable position. I empathize with the kid a lot, but I wasn't surprised by it at all because you look around the NFL and the landscape of the quarterback position, there were a few teams who could be interested. And once you pass those teams and they're pretty early in the process, you knew this kid is probably going to slide pretty far.
We heading down the home stretch with our guy, Herb Howard. He's the Chicago Bears beat reporter from InstaBigs Media. He's hanging out with us on Second City Sports or Sports Zone Chicago. Sid and Lakeena here with you. Let's go back to the Bears, Herb, and talk about their off-season moves. We haven't had you on since the conclusion of last year. Yeah. But with the Bears, as we said, their defensive line is being built right now via the trap. Perhaps maybe they pick up a couple other people between now and training camp. But I want to talk about the linebacking core of Jack Sanborn. I know some fans want him to be the next Brian Urlacher. I'm not so sure about that yet, but we'll see what happens. But but they picked up Jermaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards as free agents. At least on paper, I like that linebacking core. Talk about the Bears linebacking core. It looks like as of right now, they'll be the trendsetters for this defense going into 2023.
Yeah, I think they put themselves in a really good spot at the linebacker position right now. Very, very pleasant surprise what Jack Sanborn was able to come in and do for the Bears last year, undrafted rookie out of Wisconsin. And you saw it very, very early. It wasn't, I know, a lot of people didn't get to see it until he was actually on the field and things like that. You saw it in flashes in the preseason. But as soon as he stepped on the field at Hallis Hall, you could see that he was a guy who had a nose for the football. He was making plays. He was getting his hands on the football, interceptions. He's in the backfield, those types of things. Like, who is that kid again? He was like, oh, that's Jack Sanborn from Wisconsin. I'm like, oh, okay. It's just another one of these, camp darlings that everybody loves, and then it's going to fizzle out. And then he translated into the preseason, and then he kept doing it. And so shout out to Jack Sanborn. I think he's a phenomenal prospect. He's a professional. He approached the game the right way. He loves the game. He plays it really, really hard. We can stop the Brian Urlacher comparisons like right now. That's just absolute foolishness. But I do think that he's a guy who loves the game, who plays it really, really hard. So that's where you start. But obviously the Bears thought we still need to improve this position, right? So you go out and you get, Tremaine Edmonds, who is an absolute stud Mike linebacker. He's got that. You're talking about Brian Urlacher. That's Brian Urlacher, right? You're talking about Tremaine Edmonds. He's 6'4". He's 2'6". Like, he's got the range. He's got the length. He's got the athleticism. He can get sideline to sideline. He can get 30 yards down the field. That's what Brian Urlacher did, not what you see from Jack Sanborn. Again, that's no knock to Jack Sanborn to say he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? TJ Edwards, another guy comes in. He's got great instincts. He's able to read, dissect, react, and make tackles. And because he's able to do that, he's able to compensate for a lack of straight line speed. People talk about, he's 4.6 that in the 40 and 4, whatever, right? If your linebacker's running 40 yards, something's probably went wrong already, right? If your weak side linebacker's running 40, something's already went wrong. So don't worry about that. Can he read, diagnose, and explode in short area bursts? He's able to do that, and you see that. So I think they've put themselves in a really, really nice position at the linebacker spot. I will say this about those linebackers, all three of them, but especially the two that they signed in the offseason. These are guys that need to be clean, right? And that was also true of Brian Urlacher. They need to be clean. They don't need offensive linemen, guards, and centers getting up on them early in the down. They need to be able to read, flow, use their speed and athleticism to get to plays in the backfield. To do that, you need people up front that can eat up those blockers. Right now, I don't know if the Bears have that. They can do that on first down. I like Billings. I thought that was a really, really smart signing for the Bears. He's a guy who can play that nose spot for you. He can play that one technique spot for you and eat up, two blockers and allow those linebackers to flow. But you need more difference makers up front so that those linebackers can truly be who they are.
Absolutely. What about sort of like all the deciding, the Aaron Rodgers finally going to New York, for a few draft picks, Lamar Jackson, finally getting his money. We'll get to that in a little bit. But what's been sort of like the biggest surprising NFL offseason, whether it's a move, whether it's a signing so far that has caught your attention, or was it one that's kind of made you scratch your head?
I think the most significant thing was getting OBJ to Baltimore. I think that really got the ball rolling. That made it clear about what Lamar Jackson ultimately wanted to do and what he was probably going to do in terms of going back to Baltimore. It showed that the front office wanted to surround him with more weaponry to be able to continue to improve. You're talking about he's still a young guy. We don't know that we've seen the best of Lamar Jackson yet. He still should be an ascending player, and he's never had elite talent on the outside. We've seen him play with Hollywood Brown. We talk about Bateman and all these guys, but he hasn't had that elite level talent on the outside. And to bring in OBJ, and we already talked about Zay Flowers, and you got Mark Andrews there, I think that was a huge, huge deal for me. Getting Aaron Rodgers out of the NFC North was just like a sigh of relief. And listen, if Jordan Love is a first ballot Hall of Famer, I'm just done with the whole thing. Like I'm sick. I'm done with it. No way y'all do this 3 times. No way y'all do this 3 times in a row. Obviously, we went through the Brett Favre era, and he was done. It's like, okay, we can get to this Aaron Rodgers kid. Well, Aaron Rodgers is better than Brett Favre, and so it's like, how? Damn, we got it again. If Jordan Love is another Hall of Famer, it's just not fair. It's not fair, right? For them to go back to back to back when we haven't found one in 100 years, like it's not fair. So hopefully he's just an average NFL quarterback. I don't want to wish anything bad on the kid at all. But hopefully he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, and we can finally get a little bit of a reprieve from what's going on up there in Green Bay.
Yeah, speaking of franchise players, Herb, of course, the Bears haven't had a number 1 wide receiver probably since Brandon Marshall. Now, I'm just speaking in short term sense. But, of course, the Bears acquired DJ Moore in exchange for that number 1 pick in the offseason. What does DJ Moore bring to this Bears team? Do you think that he's the final piece for this Bears offense to help Justin Fields become the next franchise quarterback?
I think that DJ brings exactly what you said. He's a legitimate number 1 receiver. Now, I don't know that he's, top tier number 1 receiver. I don't know that he's, top 5 wide receiver in the league or anything like that, but he's a legitimate number 1 receiver that the Bears have not had for quite some time. And anytime you're able to improve a position group from the top down, that's what you want to do. I think far too often in terms of the Bears specifically at wide receiver, they've tried to improve that room from the bottom or from the middle and say, oh, this guy may be able to come in. He may be able to be our 3rd receiver or our 4th receiver. Like, who cares if he may be able to be your 3rd, 4th receiver? Go get a legitimate number 1 and push your 1 and your 2 down. Now you've got a number 1 in DJ Moore. You've got Moon and Claypool at 2 and 3. And then you can let EQ, and you still got, why am I drawing a blank on the kid, the rookie from Tennessee?
Velus Jones.
Velus Jones. Sorry. Velus Jones. You got EQ and Velus Jones in that room, and you got talent all the way down 1 through 5 because you pushed it down a notch. So I think that's what he brings. He's a guy who is very, very dynamic with the ball in his hands. He turns into a running back instantly. He's got a thick lower body. He's strong after the catch. He makes contested catches, and I think that he's a guy that's going to add to that room. And you look at what the Bears are able to do now with him, Mooney, Claypool. You got 2 tight ends. In the red zone, they should be able to create some really big mismatches. And then after all that, you still got to deal with Justin's legs. And so you can go with the size that they have at tight end in terms of Cole Kmet and pairing him with Robert Tonyan. But I think that bringing in DJ Moore improves everybody on this offense. So I don't know that he's the final piece, but he's a really, really big piece. And I think that it was something that the Bears had to have. They obviously wouldn't have made the trade without it.
What's the name in that's still up in for this year's draft that could be a potential steal, whether it's for the Bears or whether it's for somebody else in the league, like because there are a lot. We talked about it these last few minutes. So who's the guy that can be the ultimate steal for somebody, either day 2 or even day 3 tomorrow?
You know what? I don't really know, Keena. Like it's just I compare it to like boxing, right? Like you talk about like everybody got a plan to get punched in the mouth. Everybody has a plan coming into the draft until somebody does something that's like, yo, wait, what just happened? And then it throws everything kind of haywire, right? And it changes the board up and down. You get guys going where you didn't think they would go. You get guys falling where you thought they would have went earlier. And so I'm not a huge projection guy in terms of the draft so much as I am that's Ryan Pose's job. He's got a staff for it. I'll wait and see. We can evaluate him when he's done painting his full picture, right? I don't like to, see an artist paint one stroke and it's like, oh, I don't like this picture. Like, just wait, let him finish painting. Like, we don't know what it is yet, right? And so I want to see him finish painting. That being said, I'll say this positionally. I think that the cornerback position is very, very deep in this draft. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get some help at wide receiver. I still like the kid Hyatt out of Tennessee, right? We saw him produce against some really good competition. I think that he's a guy that, again, you can bring him in and maybe he becomes a guy that kicks somebody else down the board just a little bit, maybe third, fourth, whatever it's going to be. So he's an intriguing prospect for me too. But I think that just watching what Ryan Post has done, what he did yesterday in terms of going into the trenches, I think he may go back there. And so you talk about center, 3 technique. Those are the positions I would be looking at for him to go to. But I love the depth at cornerback, running back, and to a lesser extent at wide receiver.
Okay. Last question for me, Herbert, so we wrap it up with you. I think I asked this question last time you were on our show. I'll ask it again. Of course, I forgot to mention at the top, you're a guest host on the Sports Adjacent podcast with Jason Leisure, Tony Gill, and Russell Dorsey.
Shout out to Sports Adjacent. Those are my guys.
Yeah, and that's part of the Lawrence Holmes House of L podcast network.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your experience being on there multiple times.
No, I love those guys. Had always been a fan of Lawrence Holmes. I just am appreciative of the work that he's done in the industry. I think he's one of the absolute jewels that we have in Chicago in terms of the sports industry. Not only what he does in the business, but what he does, outside of it in terms of how he gives back to the community, how he uses his own connections and, where he's been able to go and the people that he's been able to meet to do some good for less fortunate programs and get, programs that don't have equipment, get them equipment from other programs that have an abundance of equipment. They're getting new stuff in every year. And so he's like, hey, I've got connections up at this, high end school, but I also know kids at this kind of low end school. Let me get some things there. And so I think using his platform, I've just always been appreciative and a huge fan of the work that Lawrence Holmes does. I love that dude a lot. I can remember going to, what was it? I think it was 2019 when the Bears had that first game here. They had the kickoff party and all that in Grant Park, and they were doing that. I remember the 670, the score was broadcasting live from, I want to say like the Prudential Building or something like that in the lobby. And I was down there hanging out and I just went past and I bumped into Lawrence Holmes and I was like, yo, just really didn't know him at all. Just like, I really appreciate your work. I'm going to, work my way on your show. And he was like, cool, man. Like, do your thing. I'll see you when you get there. And I know he's probably like, who the hell is this dude? And what is he talking about? But he was like, cool, man. I'll see you when you get there. And so it was kind of like a full circle moment to talk to him and be on this show on 670 and those types of things. I'm just a huge fan of him. Jason Leisure from the Sun Times and, Sports Adjacent, he's become a true friend of mine, like a really, really good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. When I got into this industry, I didn't do it with the thought of making friends. It just wasn't what I was thinking it was going to be. But the first time I walked into Hallis Hall, Jason was the first person to come up to me, introduce himself, say, hey, if you need anything, let me know. He's been a great sounding board for me, offered me great advice throughout this process. I absolutely love Jason Leisure. I can't say enough great things about him. And so getting to know Tony Gill and the rest of those guys through that process has just been super, super dope. Dorsey, like it's fun. So I love those guys, all of them.
Well, you're great on that show too, and we love those guys. Make sure you give them a holler for us because Jason owes us another interview. So does Russ, and we'll have Tony on too, I guess. And so
I'll say I guess, right?
I guess.
Russ is really the one. Tony is crazy, but Russ is really the one that's super crazy.
You might be right about about that. But thank you so much, Get Her, for joining us today. As always, it's been so much fun. Where people can find you and all your great content that you do for the Bigs.
Sure, you can follow me at Herb Howard 411. You can follow the Bigs at It's the Bigs. Stay up to date on all the latest content as we go through the draft this weekend. We'd love to hear from you. Leave your comments and get back to them as quickly as possible. But again, I just appreciate y'all for giving me the opportunity to come on and hang out with y'all again. It's always a good time. So thank y'all so much.
Oh, no problem.
Be back soon.
Yeah, much continued success and enjoy the rest of the draft. Enjoy the rest of the off season. We'll definitely have you on once training camp starts in late July in that hot sun in Dallas Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be out there. I'm gonna give me a bucket hat this year. I've been avoiding bucket hats, but I'm gonna give me a bucket hat this year to keep that sun off me a little bit.
Yeah.
Smart investment. All
right, y'all. Peace.
Yeah, have a great weekend and continued success.
Indeed, thank you.
All right.
All right. Once again, that's the Bigs' Bears beat reporter Herb Howard on Second City Sports. Actually, it's Second City Sports on Sports Channel Chicago. Lakeena McGee, Sydney Brown with you. Now we gotta do some of the stuff rapid fire, Sid.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to go first? You want to do?
Let's get the baseball out the way.
Okay. I was ready to say that.
The Cubs take 2 out of 3. If my math projections are correct, they take 2 out of 3 for the San Diego Padres. They defeated them yesterday up at Wrigley Field. Of course, they had 3 home runs. Nelson Velasquez, Dansby Swanson finally hit his first, I believe, Wrigley Field. No, it was Eric Hosmer who hit his first,
Hosmer was the one.
His first Wrigley Field home run. Of course, Dansby Swanson hit a home run in his 7th inning to clinch it for the Cubs. Of course, the Cubs bats have come alive here. I know that pitchers been struggling a bit. Steve Wineski had a nice start the other night. I was there last Saturday in that cold against the Dodgers. He stunk up the joint, even though the Cubs were technically still in the game. But he's finally come around. But those bats are still continuing to wake up for the Chicago's Northsiders. Their record now is at 14 wins and 10 losses as they take on the Miami Marlins on the road this weekend.
Yeah, it should be an interesting series. They've been a big surprise this year. Now, yeah, I mean the Cubs. Look, they had a couple. That loss against the Padres in the middle of that 3-game series was a little bit tough to swallow because they had their chances to pull ahead, but that didn't happen. But they came back and won. It took the rubber match there, so that was really cool. I think. Look, they have like a 17 and not 17, like a 11 and like 8 record against some both the AL and the NL West. So that's actually pretty good. If you're if you're a Cubs fan, you gotta be feeling pretty good. As of this recording, they're 14 and 10 right now. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that they would be this good this quick in the season, but you gotta be feeling pretty good right now. And look, Kyle Hendricks is supposed to come back next week, so another
Seiya Suzuki's now back. He's still trying to find himself. So things are looking up for the Northsiders. I know St. Louis is struggling. I know Milwaukee by default is the best team in that division. Well, Pittsburgh is because they're doing it without O'Neal Cruz, who injured himself in that ugly slide against the White Sox a couple of weeks ago. But Pittsburgh's continuing to roll. Will they keep it up? I'm not sure. But the Cubs are in the mix. As long as they stay in the mix, they'll pay themselves off later on in the season if they can contend for the division. Perhaps realistically, I think they'll be in a better position to clinch one of those 3 wild card spots. But as long as they play a slightly above 500, do not go into these long losing streaks, I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think they should be okay too. I think they got a pretty tough stretch coming up, so should be interesting there. Sid, I know you don't want to. I know you want to talk about your White Sox.
Can you do me a big favor as we go into the White Sox, Lakeena?
Yes.
I know you're a smart person. You follow instructions. Are you on the Twitter right now?
Yes, sir.
Can you go to my Twitter page and read out loud what I posted after last night's loss?
I can, and as I'm doing that, the Sox have now lost 8 in a row. So let me see here. Give me a second to post. I'm at a loss 4 words. They said it all in big, caps.
Yes.
after the loss again to the Rays, the first game, that 4-gamer, good grief. That was that was awful. I was turning back and forth then when I saw the Rays. I'm like, oh God, this is not good. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else you can say at this point. I mean, look, could the White Sox put together a 7 or 8 game win streak? Sure, they can.
Mm-hmm.
Can they? I doubt it. But I mean, they're capable. But I know they've had a tough stretch, facing the Rays and facing the Blue Jays. Now they've got to face the Rays again at home this weekend. They've already lost the opener, but I don't know. I mean, between the pitching and the hitting, I just don't know what can be fixed here. I know Rick Hahn had a press conference before that game yesterday.
Blah, 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 blah. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. I know after you, I know you're at a lost words. I know you found those words, but yeah, I don't know what to say at this point. If Tim Anderson does come back, could he give him a spark? I don't know if that'll do anything, but what do you think? Just keep it short and sweet if you want.
Yeah, okay, here's the thing. I know Tim Anderson and Hanser Alberto will start their rehab assignments in Charlotte this weekend, and so at least that's a positive sign, but the White Sox need to get that bullpen in order. Jake Diekman, I'm done with him. Aaron Bummer, the same thing. They're starting pitching. I like Dylan Cease. I know you lost last night, but I don't place last night's loss on Dylan Cease. They need to give that guy some help offensively, and that just hasn't happened over the past year and a half. The other starting pitchers, the Lance Lynn, he talks more on AJ Brzezinski's podcast than he does pitching. He did well in the WBC, but it hasn't translated to his start of the season so far this year. He gets some more home runs than he strikes out folks. Lucas Giolito, he's been inconsistent. A week ago, he had a great start against Philadelphia. His last start against Tampa Bay last Sunday afternoon. After the first couple of innings, he did settle down, but he's been bad this year. He pitches again tonight. He's 1-2 with a 4.50 ERA. It's hard for me to say. Michael Kopech needs to turn it around. Lakeena, I know that Pedro Grifol, is he blameless? No, but you cannot blame everything on him. I think what Ozzie Guillen said after Wednesday's loss against Toronto, and you saw all the players, and I tweeted out on my Twitter account, the long faces of Eloy and Luis Robert in particular. It looked like to me that they lost Game 7 of the World Series. I get you're supposed to look like that after you lose the championship, but I know some people say, well, at least those guys care. It looks good for a moment, but you forget when you go in that clubhouse, you can forget about it, flush it out of your system. Tomorrow's a new day. You control what happens on that field. It's all up to the players at this point. It's all about attitude, and it starts up here with the attitude. It just looks like, especially the last two games of that Toronto series, it looks like whenever they got down or wherever a bad play happened, they just look defeated. And that's not supposed to be a look of a team that's supposed to contend this year.
Yeah, it really is. I saw that look, and I'm like, well, damn, look. I know it's been a frustrating loss, but you guys you lost like Game 7 of the World Series or an LCS. I mean, it's just like, I know you're supposed to care, but I think you're doing a little bit too much. So could they figure it out? They got time to figure it out, but will they though? I'm at that point where I'm just like, just put us out of our misery. Just put the White Sox fans out of their misery. Like 7-19, I think that's like the worst stretch they've had in a few years. So
since 1986.
Yep. That was pretty bad. They were like what 9-17 or something like that. So that was pretty brutal. So we're just to see what happens with that. Now, real quick, I'll say what impressed me so far this week. I talked about it. I don't know if you heard the Monday show, but Drew Maggi,
great job.
Drew Maggi. Oh, well, thank you. I try. Drew Maggi, of course, who of course, a 33-year-old journeyman minor leaguer who got his first shots at bats. Played in that second game against the Dodgers. Just a great moment. His parents were there. His brothers, his three brothers were there. His sister, I think his sister is pregnant, so she couldn't travel to Pittsburgh. But that was a really sweet moment. He had a couple of strikeouts, but if he doesn't end up going on, in that series at the Nationals, they played them this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really great moment. So, of course, you guys get a chance to check it out. Of course, we got the call up too. But yeah, that was one of my favorite moments for this week in baseball.
The New York Mets finally stopped their short losing streak. I know Max Scherzer is supposed to come off the suspension list soon. I watched the game last night between them and the Nationals. Of course, the Nationals took the first two games of that series in Flushing, New York. And before last night's win for the Mets, they struck out 28 times and scored one run. Last night, they beat the Nationals 9-8, but Lakeena, they're having issues too with their bullpen. I know their closer Edwin Diaz is out, at least for the majority of the season, but Did you see the look on Buck Showalter's face after they gave up that grand slam to C.J. Abrams?
Yes.
He looked like, excuse my French, he looked like he wanted to shit in his pants.
Yeah, he was.
But the Mets came back to score the next 2 ones, and they ended up winning the ball game.
Thankfully, he was a little bit happier after that. But yeah, that was not. He didn't have a good look. But again, they ended up coming back and winning that game. The Mets did. So it all was not lost in there. So looks like the Mets are starting to figure it out. It looks like the Blue Jays are starting to figure it out. Yeah. Granted, I know it was against the White Sox. I know. I get it. I get it. But they got a nice first. They play. They've won 4 in a row. They play the Mariners. That should be a fun series this weekend, starting tonight. So that should be a lot of fun as well. But I think Toronto is starting to kind of get things going here.
Atlanta, they took 3 out of 4 from the Miami Marlins. I know they failed to sweep yesterday. I'm talking about Atlanta, but it looks like Atlanta's starting to turn the corner. The Miami Marlins are still at 500. I will not sleep on them just yet. I'm not saying they're going to the playoffs or anything like that, but it's not a team that you should overlook. I know they took 2 or 3 from Cleveland last weekend on the road, but they won the getaway game yesterday. But Atlanta's starting to come on a little bit. Like I said, Pittsburgh is leading the NL Central right now. I don't know if they're going to keep it up, but I don't see that happening. Also, too, the Minnesota Twins, they took 2 or 3 from the Yankees at home. I still don't believe in Minnesota, but no, I'll leave that alone. And also, too, your Phillies beat the Seattle Mariners 1-0 the other on Wednesday on a getaway day.
Yeah, that was a big series, and I think the Phillies needed that a little bit more. They're back at 500. So things are still kind of sort itself out. I know the Dodgers lost. I know the Dodgers lost a couple of course after losing 2 out of 3 to the Pirates, but. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Look, they still got a lot of new guys, so I'm sure. Look, they're still right there in the trenches with the deep ass in the West. That West is still wide open, so I'm sure they'll figure it out.
What about Arizona Diamondbacks? It looks like they could be another surprise team this year. I'm not putting them in the playoffs, but they slowly coming up as well. No one's talking about them.
Granted, of course, those games they won 2 out of 3 against the Royals, which is not much. So look, they can't help who they play in this schedule. So it'll be interesting to see. But if they can keep it up once they start playing the Dodgers and the Padres and such, that's what I really want to see if these guys are for real. Now absolutely. So going to the schedule for this weekend. Some of these series have already started. So Kansas City and Minnesota will be at 3:10, covered a little bit about an hour from now on the MLB Network. Baltimore and Detroit, they start their series. So does the Cubs and the Marlins. We talked about that too. ESPN Plus. That'll be the first game of that series will be streamed there. Pittsburgh and Washington. That should be an interesting series. Seattle and Toronto. Oh, great. Another series going to be torn by Goody.
Rematch of last year's wild card series, which Toronto lost.
Yeah, I'm sure Toronto's going to want a little mini revenge there. Big one here in the NL East. You got the Braves and New York. That should be a fun series. Cleveland and Boston. And Tampa Bay continues their series against the White Sox. Yay. Go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow and Sunday, so maybe the losing streak will end by then. Hopefully it'll end tonight, but not it'll end while I'm there tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. It has to end at some point.
Please,
it has to. It has to. It has to. You mentioned this weekend series. Continuing here, the New York Yankees will visit the Texas Rangers. The Rangers are out the gate this year with the 14 wins and 11 losses. The Anaheim Angels will travel to Milwaukee this weekend. That should be a fun series north of us. Of course, Philadelphia, Houston, the rematch of last year's World Series. That's the first game of the Apple TV Plus Friday night doubleheader. That's tonight at 7:10. Of course, you have Arizona at Colorado, Cincinnati at Oakland, the rematch of the 1990 World Series, which Cincinnati shot everybody. I know that was a long time ago. And of course, you have the St. Louis Cardinals and the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's the second game of that Friday night doubleheader for Apple TV Plus. Of course, your national television schedule for baseball for this weekend looks like this. On Saturday on ESPN Plus at 12:10, Baltimore at Detroit. Fox Saturday Baseball, your game of the week looks like this. For those of you in Chicago and the state of Florida, you'll get the Cubs in Miami. The rest of you will get Atlanta at the New York Mets from Citi Field in Queens, New York. And of course, on MLB Network on Saturday and Sunday at 5:05 p.m. Chicago time, we'll have San Francisco and San Diego in the Mexico series. And of course, Sunday On Peacock, we will have the Cubs and the Marlins. That's at 11:05 a.m. Central Standard Time. That's Sunday morning on Peacock. Chris Voster's the Black Host TV voice. He'll be doing that game, so check him out, support him. And of course, Sunday Night Baseball will have the rematch of the World Series between Philadelphia and Houston. Cal Schwarber, Philadelphia will be mic'd up for sound.
Oh, that should be a fun one too.
Yes,
that should be a fun series as well. And that is your schedule for this weekend in baseball.
Yes, heading down the home stretch here on Second City Sports, the Friday edition, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live and live in color. Sid Lakeena here with you. Let's wrap up, Lakeena, by talking about that playoff hockey. Let's do that. Stanley Cup playoff hockey. Of course, we have some Game 6s that's coming up tonight as my computer continues to load. Game 6 is tonight. Your Hurricanes, Lakeena, Carolina, and the New York Islanders.
I hope they win it tonight. I hope because they missed
that's
a big opportunity to wrap it up.
That's at 6 o'clock on TBS. Carolina leads that series 3-2. Of course, the Islanders took Game 5 the other night. Boston and Florida. Boston goes back to Florida for Game 6. Of course, Florida stole Game 5 the other night. Boston wasn't for their power play. They've been blown out the water, but we'll see if Boston can wrap up the series tonight. That's at 6:30 p.m. on TNT. Of course, at 8:30 on TBS, Game 6 between the Dallas Stars and the Minnesota Wild. Stars lead that series 3-2. And, of course, at 9 o'clock tonight on TNT, the Seattle Kraken. They're trying to become the second team since the Vegas Golden Knights in 2018 to win a playoff series. This will be their first playoff series win. If they can knock out the defending Stanley Cup champs, Seattle's up 3-2 in that series.
All right, tomorrow's matchups. You got Toronto hoping to win. Can they win a series? Yeah, we'll see. They got Tampa Bay on the road. So that'll be the 6 o'clock game on TBS. The Rangers let another opportunity slip away to end their series with the Devils.
They got dominated last night. Good grief.
Yeah, and hopefully they can switch those fortunes at home back at MSG. Then at 7 o'clock on ABC and also streaming on ESPN Plus. And of course, Edmonton and the Los Angeles Kings. Edmonton, took the 3-2 lead. That's a 9 o'clock game on TBS. We'll see if they can clinch that series there. Yeah,
and that's been a physical series. I'm talking about the Kings and the Edmonton Oilers. That's a rematch of last year's first round series, which Edmonton won. Can they close out again? Connor McDavid, it's time for you to step up, my man.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens.
On the first side for the Rangers, Lakeena, Patrick Kane.
Yes, where are you?
Tarasenko, the brave man, Artemi Panarin. We need you. Yeah,
exactly. So we'll see what happens here. Now, all 4 of these games on Sunday are if necessary. So, these could all be Game 7s if they get extended tonight. So we won't preview that. But yeah, that's your schedule for Stanley Cup playoffs on ABC and on TBS.
Yes. You're listening to Second City Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you. Lakeena, anything else that you need to get off your chest before we close up shop for the weekend?
Well, just a Lamar Jackson thing, of course. He got his contract extension. I guess he's now the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. We talked about right before we started recording, Sid, and I want to get the numbers right here. Let me raise it back up. 230 million. No, not 200. 185 million guaranteed for Mr. Jackson. 52 million a year. He'll make that. I know people say, well, he bet on himself and he won. That's true, but let's also remember that no team was gonna give up 2 first-round picks. So he probably didn't really have much of a choice but to go back to Baltimore, especially now that they got OBJ and they now have the Jackson Zay Flowers. We'll see what they do in these last couple of games. So we just see what happens. But yeah, I just want to give my thoughts on that.
Okay. Remind me to talk about this on Monday. Lakeena just is coming across the wires over the last couple hours or so. And we talked about the Bally Sports as a restructuring after their bankruptcy. The Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury, the WNBA team, are the first teams to abandon the Diamond Sports regional sports networks. They're signing over-the-air and digital deals. Remind me to talk about that more in depth on Monday.
Oh, yeah. We'll definitely have to talk about that. We also got to talk about this, too. Apparently, there's a mass exodus over in Colorado with Deion Sanders. Apparently, the 55th guy has just entered the transfer portal. And look, usually that happens when a new coach comes in. Sometimes you might see maybe 15 to 20 guys leave, but this is the 55th guy that's left. that's not good if you're Dion. So I don't know, something might be going on in Boulder. So we'll talk more about it on Monday, but I just want to get that out there too.
Yeah, and one last thing before we close up shop, not to end on a sad note, but RIP to talk show host, news anchor,
yes.
Jerry Springer. He passed away the other day at the age of 79. Of course, he until the last few years, he filmed his talk show here in Chicago at the NBC Tower at 454 North Columbus Drive. Of course, I didn't have a chance to attend his show live, but it was part of my childhood in the 90s. I was going to high school, and during my last 3 years, I never had eighth period, so I took the CTA bus home, rushed home to watch Jerry Springer. He aired every day here in Chicago at 2 o'clock on Channel 5, the NBC affiliate here in Chicago. He changed the way that talk shows were presented at the time, going that raunchy route. It was him. It was Ricky Lake, Jenny Jones, Sally Jesse, Raphael. Remember Richard Bay, Lakeena, when Channel 26 switched back to English? He was only on for 1 year, but it was that trashy, ratchet talk show. The model that was following the 90s. It was a wild time in the 90s, but Jerry Springer, he was mayor of Cincinnati. Then he became a news anchor. He was he covered that 1990 Cincinnati Reds World Series championship team for Cincinnati before he went to the talk show business. I wanted to ask you, what were your best or perhaps worst memories of Jerry Springer?
Well, no, I had nothing but great memories. I think. Look, I said on Twitter yesterday, he was their guilty pleasure, whether you liked it or not, whether you want to admit that you watched it or not. So it was tough hearing that news after he died after a short illness. Steve Wilkos, of course, has his own talk show. Worked security there for many years. I know he visited him before, and he kind of felt that something was wrong. So I think he felt it was a goodbye. So I think he probably realized this might be the end for him. But I'm glad he's glad that he was able to kind of at least say goodbye to Jerry before he passed. Now, today's kids will never know that great era of talk shows that you just mentioned, Sid. I mean, after 2 o'clock, after 3 o'clock, just after the soaps go off, that was kind of like the thing, whether you had to kind of pick and choose which shows you wanted to watch. Jerry, Ricky Lake, Sally Jesse, many others, Rolando Watts. There have been Richard Bay, as you mentioned. There were so many great, Charles Perez. There were so many great talk shows.
Oh, I forgot about him. Maury too. Maury.
Yeah, more of course, more who just edited, of course, says some great things about him. He just edited his the repeats actually aired paired very well here in Chicago. They were some of the highest rated, even the repeats were. So that just shows you how popular he was. So yeah, no one will understand. Of course, nowadays you got TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, so you really don't, and YouTube, so you really don't need to do talk shows anymore unless you want to really promote something. So that great era of talk shows and that era, I think, will never be forgotten. So rest in peace to Mr. Jerry Springer. I know people didn't like him because of the way he did it, but he knew where the market was. And that's why he played off that market. And look how long he lasted.
Yeah, and a couple other notes before we close out shot, Lakeena. I'm sure you saw this too. Remember, MTV would do those spring breaks in the mid 90s when they brought him on a couple of times. I was one of them. I watched them. I ain't gonna lie to you. It was some of the greatest entertainment ever. And number two, he knew his audience. MTV knew that audience because that was the audience that watched him, and that was his hardcore audience. They brought him on there for the last few years in the 90s to do the spring break editions. Those were classic. I'm not gonna lie, you could probably catch some of those clips on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're on YouTube. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And number two,
right?
Yeah, and number two, remember Channel 5 here in Chicago, WMAQ. Remember Ron Matthews, who's now retired. I know Karen Marine's still doing some stuff here around town. Remember, they were the #1 news team at night. But, of course, they brought on Jerry Springer to do his quote-unquote final thought on their newscast. Both of them didn't like it, which led to both of them exiting the station. Of course, Channel 7, ABC here in Chicago has been #1 at 10 o'clock since then. So just another couple of historical facts to point out for Jerry Springer and his connection to Chicago.
Yeah, the show actually rated very well here in Chicago. So I think that might be why they did what they did, but I can see why Ron and Carol were not fans of that. So I remember hearing about that. So yeah, but it's a double-edged sword, but hey, it is what it is. So RIP to one of the all-time greats, Mr. Jerry Springer.
Yes. All right, Lakeena, closes out.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sidney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80, SIDKID80. SIDKIDA0. If you did not hit that like button, please hit the like button on the way out. If you're watching us here on YouTube, make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast at War Media Podcast. Excuse me, War Media Podcast. There's WARR Media PODCASTS. We're available on all podcast platforms, including our Howard Radio app. And follow War Media on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at WARR Media. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. And don't forget, we're also on Roku TV.
Roku!
Just wherever you have the Roku stick or you get the Roku app on whatever device you have, just go to the App Store, type in Sports Zone Chicago. It's right there for you. You catch our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellas. Of course, I'm sure they're gonna have some great draft talk coming up tomorrow. Also, to What's Up, Cuz. So yeah, it's all right there for you anytime, anywhere you want.
All right, make sure you catch Second City Sports live and in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. exclusively on Sports Zone Chicago. One more game, as you young kids would say. Catch Second City Sports exclusively on Sports Zone Chicago live and in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Absolutely. And we also want to thank Bears beat reporter from the Bigs, Herb Howard. Of course, he's become one of our favorites. So make sure you guys check out his stuff. And anytime you want it's the Bigs. Also to follow him on Twitter and on Instagram. He has always great content. I'm sure he's gonna have a lot of great stuff coming up with the draft these next couple of days. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yes, it will be a lot of fun. So, as I said, you'll surely be out at Sox Park this weekend. Hopefully, the losing streak stops tonight. If not, I think your show will play a big part of it, stopping it tomorrow over the weekend. So, I'll let you know if any crazy things happen. So, hopefully, the White Sox will turn this thing around sooner rather than later.
Hopefully, you'll be their good luck charm. So, enjoy the rest of the draft, all the NBA and NHL playoffs. There's some golf and some soccer happening too. So a great sports weekend coming up. For Sid, I'm Lakeena. This has been Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you Monday.
Go Bears. Holla!